just summarise the process theory. Here's God. So this is God. Here's you. This is your half. You're a half of the soul, actually. So there's you. There's a connection that can be established between God and you. But your soul is your emotions, your feelings. Anything else it is? Passions. Desires. Memories.
Aspirations.
And so forth, right? There's quite a... In fact, there are literally hundreds of characteristics or attributes of a soul. This is you. This is the real you. Not your body, not your physical body or your spirit body, but the real you is actually behind those two things. It's your soul. And the only way that God connects with you is soul to soul. Now, what's love? An emotion. So, if I'm going to feel God's love, what am I going to need to do? Feel my emotions. If I'm unwilling to feel my own emotions, how can I feel an emotion that God has for me? Very difficult, isn't it? How can you feel loved when you're not allowing yourself to feel any emotion? Obviously, you're not going to even know when you're loved, are you? But if you can allow yourself to feel these things, then what straight away happens is your soul becomes open to a connection with God. Does that make sense? Now, the connection is sometimes referred to as the Holy Spirit, right? Rather than get all religious on you, the Holy Spirit is actually a conduit. You could think of it like an electrical cord that connects God with you. So you can imagine yourself got a plug on your crown chakra, right? And God's got a plug, and there's this cord called the Holy Spirit. And God's just waiting to plug this cord into you. Right? Just waiting to plug the cord in.
Does it always go in the crown?
But it's in the soul. Of course it doesn't go in a crown physically, because this is our physical body, and we're talking about the plug's actually in our soul, right? The plug is in your feelings, your emotions, your passions and desires. What actually happens is when you open up yourself and you begin to have a desire for God's love to enter you, what that basically is uncovers your plug. And the Holy Spirit plugs into you. The Holy Spirit is this conduit. So you could think of it as a conduit. You know what I mean by that? A cord or a cable, a conduit, via which the love flows from God into you. Right? Now, the Holy Spirit is sometimes also called the Spirit of Truth. So what does that tell you about the Holy Spirit? The conduit, the plug. The plug can only go into you when you are in a state of truth. As soon as you are not in a state of truth, and I'm talking in relative to God's truth here, then there's a disconnection. And you need to use your will, your desire, your passion to sort out why you don't want to be in a state of truth. Now, it could be that you're just very, very angry with men, and, you know, and the only problem is that you could say half of God's qualities are masculine. So you're in trouble. You're denying half of God if you do that, right? Could be that, right? Or you could just be very upset with women, right? And half of God's qualities are feminine. So obviously you're not going to be able to feel love coming from the feminine side of God if inside of yourself you're angry with the feminine or the masculine. Can you see that? So this Holy Spirit, or Spirit of Truth, is the thing, the conduit, that is established by one thing, and it's by prayer. And what did I define prayer as? The pure desire. Now, when you develop the pure desire in your heart to actually long for God, when you long for God, that begins opening up your soul. Now, how many of you, when you watched the DVDs, the very first DVDs about the introductory one of the universe, how many of you felt really different during that and afterwards. How many of you felt really different when you were watching it? Because your soul was beginning to open up. And as soon as your soul begins opening up, you start becoming more and more emotional. That's the natural result of your soul opening up. Emotional is good. Isn't it? So many of us feel it's bad, don't we? How you look at the world today, isn't it geared for emotional suppression?
Yeah, it is. Absolutely.
Yeah. You know, you go to work. Are you allowed to cry at work?
No.
Why is that? Doesn't make any sense. Like, it's 8 hours of your day and lots of stress. Of course you're going to want to cry at times at work, don't you?
Stress leave.
Yeah. And then they can give you things like stress leave. Why do they have to do that? Because you didn't cry at work. Isn't that right? Yeah. Okay. So, what we're desiring is God's love to flow through into the soul. But can you see why I'm talking also about praying for God's truth? Because this conduit that establishes the connection between you and God can't be established without truth. Without you being in a state of truth in comparison to God. Which is not the same as me saying you being in a state of truth in comparison with yourself. Or with the world around you even. The world around us is not in a state of truth, is it? No. If it was, would we even be having to sit here listening to these things? Of course we wouldn't. We'd already be in it, right? We would already all be at one with God. We'd be right. Okay?
Does the physical body feel it as well, or is it only spirit?
Initially it's hard for the physical body to feel the inflow of divine life, but as the feelings intensify, the feelings that change inside of the soul cause major changes in both the spirit and material bodies. So yes, the spirit and physical bodies will definitely feel the changes that are going on inside of the soul. Remember that this is a soul-to-soul connection. So we're not talking about anything physical here. We're not talking about any spirit-body mechanism, metaphysical either. We're talking about the real you, which is your emotions, feelings, passions and desires. That's the area of you that is the most powerful, and that is the area that connects with God. And that makes sense when you think about it, doesn't it? God has all of these feelings. The dominant one being love. They are all emotional, are they not? Yeah. How do you feel when you love another? Doesn't it take up a lot of your life? It's beautiful, isn't it?
Yeah.
What are you? I can feel a lot of negative feelings about love there. If there's negative feelings about love, it's not love. It's something else. Trust me. All right. So love is a beautiful, passionate, desirous thing, is it not? Okay. That's why everybody wants it, don't they? Because of that. Now, love is an emotion, so therefore I am going to have to be emotional if I am going to want to experience love completely. But what we often do is we say, yeah, love, yeah, that's great. I'm happy to be emotional when I'm experiencing love. But I'm not happy to be emotional when I'm experiencing pain or jealousy or anger or any of these other things. I'm not happy to be emotional then. Or the biggest one that usually we're not happy with is grief. If you have read many books about emotional work, I don't know how many of you have read books about emotional work, but there's some very, very good ones around nowadays. There's a man, John Bradshaw, have any of you heard of him? He made one called Homecoming. Very good book. And he mentions that grief is the healing emotion. Grief is the healing emotion. If you are not prepared to feel your grief, you will never heal.